Doc, you were in the hearing yesterday before the Senate Committee on Women and Children. The LSU was the prime focus. Did you hear anything during the hearing that surprised you?
No, not really. There was a lot of compelling testimony from students and, a lot of pointed questions from legislators. But, this is the third hearing, and it's of this committee that's doing some incredible work, in my opinion. And it's hard to be surprised at this point.
There was some questioning about why no one has been disciplined yet, which kind of surprised me. When I was watching it, I thought, God, nobody has really paid any consequences. Is that coming?
Well, so those are decisions that LSU has to make, and I think that the leadership there and their board is reviewing what has taken place, what took place, the timeline, what the culture was, what the policy environment was. And as I understand it, they're going to continue to evaluate what discipline can be brought forward. These are difficult decisions. In hindsight, we have a lot of clarity, right? And I will tell you that it's our board's role to ensure that we've got leaders of character in place, and when we see evidence that the leaders we've chosen lack that character, we have to take action. And I believe the LSU board and their leadership is at the same disposition.
Dr. Jim, you said something very interesting a couple of seconds ago. You said that you found the students' testimony compelling. You're a guy who's in charge of a bunch of colleges. You're around college, you're faculty and administrators and students all the time. By compelling, did you mean surprising? And if you meant surprising and or compelling, what did you hear that was compelling?
Compelling meaning prompting you to action, prompting you to deeper thought, prompting you to a deeper understanding of the issues is what I mean by compelling. And what it is, student leaders today are so much more conversant on really difficult issues, right? They seem to be than when I was a student. Now, maybe I was an anomaly with the guys that I ran with at Northwestern, but these students are very thoughtful, and they elevated the issue rhetorically in a way that should have raised some eyebrows for people. They should say, you know what, hey, these are serious issues. And this is not, I want to be very clear, these are not new issues, right? When I was a student 30-some years ago, was the first time we saw a survey about the prevalence of sexual violence on campus and what a challenge it is. And those statistics, to be honest, haven't changed much over time. Awareness has. And that puts the onus on us as administrators and as leaders in higher education to stop doing the same things we've always done. If we don't start taking it seriously, and if we don't adjust our policies, but more importantly, our practices, and then employ people that are going to execute those practices, then it's going to be a scourge we'll be talking about 30 years from now. To me, that's unacceptable.
Jim, I'm an LSU grad, and I know that football has ruled, sports and athletics have ruled at LSU for decades and decades and decades, and yet we still heard victim after victim get up yesterday and say athletics always comes first. How do we change that? How do we fix that?
Universities are in place for a couple of primary reasons. Number one, educating students, right? Preparing students for the future of work, preparing students to be contributing citizens. Two, to conduct research that changes lives. Research like what goes on at Louisiana Tech, where their data analytics department was able to advise Air Force Global Strike Command at bases around the world about what they can expect from COVID-19 on their bases. Research like at University of Louisiana Lafayette, where they did the preclinical trials for the Pfizer vaccine at the New Iberia Research Center. That's the importance of these universities. Athletics is important because it's a great, we're in Louisiana. We love football. We love sports, and it brings us together. It builds community. But my goodness, it cannot take priority over the safety of students or the validity of the sacredness of the academic mission of the institution.
Doc, is LSU an anomaly? You're in charge, like I said, of a lot of colleges, and you know a lot of people that work for a lot of colleges across the country. Is LSU an unusual case, or is it perhaps more widespread than anyone would want to admit?
We've all seen stories that dominated the headlines out of Penn State, out of Michigan State, another one out of Michigan recently, Colorado, go back in the 90s. Unfortunately, you see a cycle of these types of issues arising from time to time. And, there's an old kind of a management axiom, if you will, that events plus response equals outcomes. Things are going to happen, right? We have a lot of people, a diverse group of people that come from different backgrounds, have different ethics, different priorities, and we even have some bad people that come to our schools or even work at our schools that maybe we just don't know about it. When they engage in bad acts, that's the first part of it. It's your response that determines the ultimate outcome, and we've got to master that response. And the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff as the number one concern. And then two, ensuring that we are moving forward within an ethical framework that makes sense. That's one that's consistent, one that demonstrates that we're committed to a higher way of thinking and living.
What is the ethical framework put in place by the president of the University of Louisiana System?
You saw that in our response to COVID-19. We put a hierarchy of principles, and it was very clear that every decision we make, first and foremost, will focus on the health and safety of our communities, of our students, faculty, and staff. Number two, it's going to the continuity of learning and the quality of learning is sacrosanct, but it has to follow principle one. And then number three is the livelihood of these institutions and the communities they serve. And so you establish these principles, and then you follow them in your decision making. And you know what? We're not absolutists, but when you have some principles that are absolute, then they can really inform your response to even the most critical of events.
Let me ask you this, Jim, one last question with regard to the funding. You heard Senator Sharon Hewitt, talk about how much money we're spending on this that should be going to educating our children. Can that money come from the athletic department? Is that something that should be a base start? Athletics is going to fund this because you're the big part of the problem.
Well, I think so. Every institution has to make their decisions about their budgetary allocations, if you will. This is a core part of what we do, Title IX and protecting students, right? And so I think the issue was, because we were asked quite often, do you have sufficient resources to be compliant? Well, we do, but compliance is not going to get us where we need to be. We need to expand our investments in this area. And you know what? If you show me your budget, I'll tell you what your priorities are.